Good evening to wherever you may be zooming in from. I'm Rachel Messerich, Programs Manager for the American Craft Council and the coordinator behind the American Craft Forums series. I'm so pleased to welcome you all to this American Craft Forums program in association with our quarterly magazine, American Craft. I'm speaking to you today from my home in Apple Valley, Minnesota, and representing the offices of the American Craft Council in Minneapolis, which are both located on the traditional, ancestral, and contemporary lands of the Dakota and Ojibwe people. This place carries a complicated and layered history that resulted in the United States land seizure that was a project of destruction that denied the Dakota and Ojibwe free and unhindered access to land that fundamentally shapes their identity and lives. We pay tribute to the Dakota and Ojibwe and invite you to consider the land on which you live and the confluence of legacies that bring you to stand where you are, particularly through critical reflection and conversation with your own community. Fostering, fostering conversation and community are at the heart of ACC's mission, and American Craft serves as one of the most vital contributions in service of this mission and hopefully to the field of craft and American culture. ACC's 80-plus-year-old publication contributes to the craft conversation by shining a light on the diversity, resilience, beauty, and impact of American craft and its makers. In 2025, we look at craft through the lens of four themes: interior, emerge, retreat, and adorn. The editorial team has just wrapped up the summer issue retreat, which will be hitting mailboxes in just a few weeks. Plans are well underway for the fall issue on Adorn. We encourage pitches and submissions from our community and have more information about American craft on our website. Please check under Writer's Guidelines for more information. Before I dive into the program and my introduction, just wanted to thank the ACC staff, particularly our Executive Director, Andrea Specht, our Director of Programs and Events, Katie Johnson, our uber-talented editorial team, our amazing marketing team, and our events manager, Elena Clark, who is taking the behind-the-scenes tech helm for today's program. The American Craft Council is a national nonprofit member-based organization. As such, I would also like to give a big shout out to our current donors and members who make programs like this possible, and a very special thank you to the Minnesota State Arts Board and Wingate Charitable Foundation for their generous support. For those considering membership, we welcome you to join us in our support of makers, our celebration of the handmade, and our connection to a vibrant craft community. ACC members receive a subscription to American Craft Magazine, complimentary tickets to our Baltimore Marketplace and other exclusive event benefits, professional development resources for artists through our newly launched Early Career Artist Program and the Craft Lab Workshop Series, access to discounted travel, and more. Visit our website, links will be in the chat in a moment, to get started and see how your support can make a difference and explore more ways to invest in the future of craft. Moving on to a few technical and logistical reminders. Please make sure that your camera is off and your audio is muted for the program and conversation. We encourage you to participate in the chat, in the talk via the chat feature and drop any comments or questions there. Closed captioning is available during this program. On the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll see a closed caption symbol. Clicking that button will turn this feature on and off. The program will also be recorded and available for future viewing. As we emerge into spring, we're excited to gather together for a program to celebrate our spring issue of American Craft, centered, appropriately enough, around the theme of emerge. This is also a great theme and time to try new things and make some changes. We're updating our American Craft Forum series of programs to more directly tie to our magazine content. So today you'll be getting a taste of some of those changes. We're excited to present a program that goes a bit deeper into two stories from the spring issue, a neon renaissance and a handmade wonderland. We're kicking things off with an artist talk with Kelsey Issel and Meryl Pataky, the co-founders, of the neon organization She Bends, before hopping into a virtual tour of multimedia artist Paula Wilson and woodworker Mike Lagg's New Mexico creative space and studios. And if that's not all, American Craft Editor-in-Chief Karen Olson will be joining us to provide a bit of an intermission moment and some behind-the-scenes insights into how the spring issue came about. All right, y'all, we've got a lot of great stuff coming. So I'm now going to turn it over to Kelsey and Meryl, invite them to turn on their camera who will kick off our program with all things neon. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Kelsey Issel.
I'm Meryl Pataky.
And we are running She Bends, and we're just going to get our screen up and shared. We are so happy to be here today and be included in this conversation. She Bends is an organization that celebrates neon, and we really center artist benders and people who are making their neon by hand. And we're dedicated to building a future for this medium that's more inclusive, experimental, and embodied. And we hope this talk gives a little bit of context of why that's so unique within neon history.
To ground us in that work, we're going to show a video by the talented videographer Gabby Scott, which was produced for our most recent exhibition at the Museum of Craft and Design. It's called The Art of Neon. So,
all right, here we go. Oops.
All art is rooted in craft. It's what you do with the craft that elevates it into art. And it's a meditation on process.
Neon is a 120-plus-year-old craft. It's handmade. It's always been handmade. We're living through the evolution of neon going from a commercial craft to a fine art.
So much so with neon, it's like a dance, it's a choreography. The tiniest little subtle movement that you do with your hands is you have to think all of that stuff through before you start. Voltage drops as it travels, right? So we want to make sure that we're measuring the footage so that we understand how much glass we can have for neon for 15 millimeter.
We measured all of the length, and it's 31 feet.
31 feet. 90% of a sign starts with the pattern, and the pattern follows it throughout its life.
So we want to figure out where the electrodes are.
Yeah,
right?
so okay. That's like kind of aesthetics for you at this point. Like where are they least noticeable? How tall are the letters? Maybe keeping them up.
Yeah. So this is another electrode here?
Yeah, but you want to space it, right? No overlap.
A little bit?
Mm-hmm.
Like here?
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Actually, it's not that.
When you make neon, there's a point A to point Z, and it needs to function. We could do 9,000 volt.
Neon is particularly well suited as a craft skill to have these residual benefits of creative problem solving and material responsibility. It's a very tactile, embodied craft.
You're very present and mindful about where your elbows are compared to where your torso is. You know, you're not stretching your hands out. The glass will mirror every single motion that you do. If you're not in the mood, if you're jittery, if your shoulders are up in your ears, it will reflect itself in the glass. It's like a really great, mirror for how you're feeling. There's a lot of emotion in it.
As a craftsperson in neon, you're steeped in the physics, the chemistry. There's this really interesting intersection between art and science.
Woo! Okay. Dangerous. Glass is only fragile in the state where it's a solid. When it's slumped, you're not at risk of breaking the glass. And I think that that's something that people coming into the craft learn through doing. The wildest thing about neon is the bombarding process. It's 15,000 volts at 50 amps. We run the risk of being killed by our equipment every day in our shops. Once you're done with your bends and you've completed the piece, you're putting electrodes, which carry the current through the glass, on either end of the unit. Okay, I'm gonna get closer here. And you process it to light.
The super high voltage heats it up, it burns out the impurities.
Once that process is complete, we fill it with noble gas, remove it from that system, and light it up.
The quality of the light is so different with neon. These are noble gases that are in our air, formed when stars die, that are being excited to the point of illumination. Yeah, it's getting much redder over here. They burn like auroras burn. That's what we're seeing, is a very natural, cosmic, ancient form of light being captured in a glass vessel and lit up. How is that not magical?
I like how strong that's looking, and I feel like it'll get stronger.
Like that.
No, not at all. Exactly. It's starting to regulate itself. Light is not just an object. It spreads. It seeps into you. There's a life force about it. And if you've made it well, it'll last a lifetime.
All right. Well, that gives you a little setting to what we've been up to lately. And we want to give you a quick and dirty history of neon, and we're going to move into its transition from industry to art and some exciting in-betweens and what She Bends has been up to for the last
7 or 8 years.
7 or 8 years. And then we're going to go through the process, and hopefully all of that will give you a little bit of context into why we do what we do. So neon has a fascinating history, and it has really followed these like global movements of modernism and capitalism and, you know, different governmental policies. But it started as this scientific discovery in the late 1800s, where William Ramsay,
Morris Travers,
discovered basically all of the noble gases in liquefying air and distilling it, and found that neon glowed red, and it took off like wildfire. And everyone tried to capture it. How do we make it into a light form? And there were, a myriad of inventors and scientists and businessmen, who were able to do that in different forms, capture it in different vessels, capture it in a vacuum in a vessel, add different kinds of electrodes. And it finally gets its form of being put into glass tubes that are bendable in a sealed vessel with electrodes on either end, so that it can be made into different shapes and letter forms. And really, because of its magnetism and its attractiveness of its quality of light, very quickly gets put to use by, the most powerful global influence, which is capitalism and advertising, and comes to the US in a disputed first sign of the Packard building. We've recently learned that that's not true, but that is the mythology. But in the early 1900s, it comes to the US as an advertising form, and it has this golden age. It's the symbol of modernism in cities, and really the expansiveness of our highway system in the US, right? Cars are moving, they're bringing people from one place to another. And how do you get people off the road to come into your cafe or your diner or your gas station is a neon sign that can be read quickly and it's bright and it's attractive. And then because of its association with urbanism and capitalism, it goes through all of the same pitfalls, right? And so it is affected by all of these policies by first, it's given funding to beautify storefronts. Then during the Second World War, it's affected by rolling blackouts, so it's turned off. Then the GI Bill, which is post-war, all of these craft schools open, and then it's affected by the beautification down because it's a lot of the neon signs because it's associated with urban blight. And so neon becomes this kind of like mythology, right, of urban cities. And you can see this in this beautiful, this is a video from the back of a trolley car going up Market Street here in San Francisco, where we're calling in from. And it's the mythology of American capitalism, right? American cities. And as it starts fading for various reasons, because of its association with urban blight, because of it not being maintained, because of the invention of LEDs, which take over and de-skill signage in America, then artists, craftspeople, look to it to kind of steward that mythology and use that. And so starting, I mean, as early as the 30s, artists started working with neon, but really in the 50s and 60s, we move into artists using neon as an art form. And there are artists like Bruce Nauman, who's in the middle here, Tracy Emin, who uses her handwriting, Patrick Martinez, and there are so many others who are utilizing the skill of neon to make artwork, kind of pre-pop art and kind of post modernism, and then into our favorite, Krissa.
Yeah. So with the evolution of neon from an industry to a fine art form comes more conversations around conservation. And now, we have this really great example from the Krissa show, Krissa and New York, which was about her time in New York and her fascination with neon. She was completely taken by it. She called it Homeric. So she definitely saw it as a mythology. This is her magnum opus, The Gates of Times Square, inspired by Times Square. And so the exhibition was a retrospective, and it went from Dia Chelsea in New York to the Manil in Houston, and then finally to a gallery in Chicago. And what this did was provide a really unique opportunity for conservation departments to come together and really think about how to care for this woman's work. We have a video to show of the exhibition at the Manil. And Krissa was a pioneer, way ahead of her time, both just like as a sculptor with many mediums and especially with neon. She was the first person to like really, really abstract the medium, and to take signs and cut them up and make them into something completely different and make audiences think of neon in a different way. And what these exhibitions did was, these talks amongst conservators flowered into budgets that institutions were putting into symposiums and talks where conservators and neon experts came together to talk about best practices, universal methods. And Sheben's role in these discussions has really been about reminding everybody, what are we conserving? Are we conserving an object, a cultural heritage, a narrative, an identity, a memory? And we're really the conduit for artists' voices in this discussion.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Tell the story about the black glass.
The black light blue glass. So in the beginning of the video, we saw it. There was I'll point it out again, but there's a piece that's made out of what's called black light blue, which is a glass that's no longer made. And so when conservators who were, up against this task of showing her work, it was completely shattered. They saw it completely shattered and they had to try and remake it. And one of the things that happened was the Smithsonian spent a ton of money to try and remake the glass, to hire glass blowers in Italy to create the glass again. And they invested the money, and it didn't work out. It was an experiment that ended up being a failure. But the conservator whose thesis project this was actually found a guy who rummages around, abandoned lighting manufacturing. Here's the piece here, black, light, blue. And this is 20 millimeter neon. It's very large pieces. She found random tubes of blacklight that weren't even used for commercial neon and brought it to a sign shop in New York, a very famous sign shop called Light Bright. They are mostly a hub for fine artists to hire a commercial vendor to make neon, and they fabricated the work from scratch.
Yeah, and so much like this conversation, we're so honored to be shown in the Craft magazine, and we are also very honored to be invited into the conversations around conservation, because we're able to represent this kind of niche perspective of artists, benders, artists who are making the work themselves. And although Krista didn't make the work herself, and she did use craftspeople, she was thinking about neon much more as an object than a sign. And
she had a really unique relationship with her bender as well. And she did a lot of writing about the relationship between her and her bender and what they both offered each other in the process. So it was a really beautiful relationship, actually.
And those artists who used neon, really everyone stands on their shoulders, right? They started the conversation. They brought neon into the fine arts space. They expanded the boundaries of concepts that were being dealt with in neon, and really gave us and the artists that we work with the platform to do what we do, which is now we have the option to concentrate on artists who are making the work themselves, and we choose to focus on women and gender expansive artists because they're a new perspective in this medium. And so we'd like to highlight two of our recent exhibitions. One was at the Museum of Glass in Tacoma at the end of 2023, and it was called Redefining Neon Legacy. And it was an effort to really look at these emerging lineages in neon. Now that there are more bender artists who are actually teaching the craft themselves to other artists, we're starting to see these kind of themes emerge. And it was such an amazing opportunity to bring 9 artists and their teaching artists to the museum and display them all together so we could see those themes emerge in person. And
I will say that it was the first time that an exhibition sort of charted this zeitgeist of an emerging pedagogy amongst artist benders.
And so these pictures, the neon fence, which is incredible, is by Carissa Grace, who was taught at Alfred University in upstate New York by Sarah Blood. And it's one of the only remaining neon courses in college, aside from the School of Art Institute in Chicago. And Sarah Blood is one of the only, if not the only, tenured neon professor in the US. So she's gold. And this is another one of her students, Lily Reeves, who created this meditative space and now owns her own shop in
Arizona.
Oopsie. You want to talk about these works?
Yeah, so these are some of the works. We have Casey Lee's up at the top here. With the star. She creates very interesting works with neon, not solely sign focused at all. She likes to bring in new media works, projections, and you can kind of see that in her protege's work, Daniela Thatch, down at the bottom here, which incorporates Asana in krypton gas, which is a very dim gas. And the video that's on the inside of it is actually projection mapped to the outline of the neon. Then we have myself here at the bottom with the Repent piece. And I taught Jude Abuzena, who is a Palestinian-Canadian artist who created 35 watermelons that filled the entryway of the gallery about her Palestinian heritage. At the bottom right, we have Sarah Blood's work that deals with power dynamics and memory and surveillance, this one in particular. And then up above on the right-hand side is Victoria Amadizadeh, who is a professor at Tyler School of Art. And she is mainly a glassblower, but has crossed over to neon and incorporates both within her work. And so we love to see this emergence of a cross-pollination between glass blowing and other forms of glass art with neon. We're starting to see a lot of that now.
Yeah. And a fun kind of extension of this lineage is that in this show, Victoria was being presented as a student of Stephanie Sarah Lifshitz, which is who is a bender based out of Brooklyn. And in our most recent show at the Museum of Craft and Design, Victoria was actually the teaching artist in the residencies that were exhibited at that show at Tyler. So the lineage continues in real time. And one of the main really exciting things about being at the Museum of Glass in Tacoma is that we got to share the hot shop floor, and you can see Victoria showing us how it's done because she's a glass blower. So we're just going to show some videos because this was a real highlight of this kind of marriage between glass blowing and neon. Yeah, warning that we turn the sound off, but it comes on for a second.
Yeah.
So sorry if it's loud at the beginning.
So it was a huge treat to be able to offer our artists a space on the hot shop floor to collaborate with the team at, we call it MOG, Museum of Glass Tacoma. They're some of the best glass blowers in the world. This video that Kelsey just played is a video of Danny Kays showing me how to put an electrode on a glass blown piece. That is one of my pieces that the team blew for me. So it's a very collaborative effort, which is very different from neon. You're very solitary in a neon studio, and when you blow glass, you're around community and have to work around each other. So that was a new learning curve for me in particular. And then this is Jacob Wilcox. Hand pulls tubes. This is where neon starts, really, right? In the hot shop. It's all soft glass and it's pulled a lot of times by hand. And now we have kind of a resurgence of glass blowers who are also working in neon, that cross-pollination at work. And Jacob Wilcox is considered amongst our community to be one of the best tube blowers. And he's like in his 20s. He started glass blowing at the age of 11. Same with Danny Kays at a wonderful school called Hilltop Artists in Tacoma, Seattle area. Yeah. Just a little fun one. This is just kind of an overall shot of the hot shop, and at the time, Girls Just Want to Have Fun was playing, so I thought it would be a fun idea to get everybody in action. This was our setup. We bent live and did a couple of teaching demos. That's Daniela Thatch there getting ready to put an electrode on. We got the hot shop ready to go. And then Danny Kays is setting up the bombarding station. Yeah. And there she is with our friends and family t-shirt on.
And we'll have a few more videos throughout the process part where we'll show you like the different parts of the process, and some of them are from the hot shop floor at MOG too. Our last exhibition was at the Museum of Craft and Design here in San Francisco. It was called Neon as Soulcraft, which was inspired by a book called Shop Class of Soulcraft by Matthew Crawford. That is, an advocacy for manual labor and skill-based craft. And we were really it was really important to us that we were able to use our exhibition budget to produce 3 national artist residencies in neon. So one was in LA with Tiza and Myra, one was in Philadelphia with Victoria and Kristen Baker, and one was in Seattle, Tacoma area with Danny Kays, who you just saw, and Melissa Goldberg. And the pieces that were made from the residency were then brought to the exhibition to be displayed. And we also had a lot of tools and materials from the process in the exhibition to show people how neon is actually made historically and now. Victoria and Kristen in Philadelphia made like a mind map with a lot of text-based work. That was kind of their hill to climb. Text is one of the hardest things you can do in neon, especially well, and they did an amazing job with many words on this wall. Myra and Tiza in LA focused on kind of 3D sculptural neon in natural forms, and you can see This butterfly is Tisa's, this bear is Tisa's, and the flowers are Myra's. And they chose to concentrate on California native plants and animals. And then this piece was from Danny and Melissa up in Seattle. And it was this kind of experimentation and repetition of letter forms. And it spelled the word safe because learning neon in a safe space is so important and a fairly recent and rare opportunity. These are really fun little videos from the residencies. And yeah, we're just so happy to be able to share these little insights into the studios.
Oh, wow. Well,
we wanted not working.
We wanted to have a video with audio, but they introduced themselves. That's Tisa on the right and Myra on the left. And then this one, Myra is bending and she says, "Oh, I messed up." And Tisa said, "You're okay."
You're okay.
So, these residencies emphasize safe, supported skill building faces that focus not only on technique, but on belonging.
And this is Danny Key's studio, and this is me helping Melissa weld some electrodes on one of the tubes. And one of the really fun and important parts of this exhibition for Meryl and I was that we asked all of the resident artists to save their scrap glass. So as you're practicing a bend and you mess up or it's not quite right, there's all this glass that goes into a bucket and it's called scrap glass and it's usually recycled. We asked them to save that and we shipped it all to San Francisco and it was bombarded or lit up. And Meryl and I made a site-specific hanging installation called The Quilt, which was a real celebration of the process of learning glass and was why Meryl and I were just invited to a residency in March of next year, 2026, at the Corning Museum of Glass and Rockwell Museum for their anti-gravity exhibition and residency. And so we'll be doing a kind of iteration of this process-based hanging installation then. So that's what
we have coming
up next for us. Yeah.
And one of the cool things about this installation also, I mean, just to, I guess, reiterate and underscore is that this part of the process is often not seen, right? It's considered mistakes, and so they're thrown away. And I think a lot of the teachers, including myself, are big proponents of the importance of mistaking in craft, right? That's how we learn. So we really wanted to highlight that part of the process.
And really kind of centers what She Bends does in general, which is because we concentrate on artist benders, the process is a really big part of how the neon or how the artwork is made and why it's made. When artists have their hands on the material, there's all of this experimentation that goes on with different color making or different techniques or kind of pushing the process into something maybe it's not supposed to do or displaying it in a way maybe it's not supposed to be displayed commercially. And so exposing the process and showing people how neon is made is a really important part of our overall mission. And so we not only curate museum exhibitions and produce artist residencies, but we also do a ton of public programming, stuff like this, but also live bending demonstrations. And we have much more of a concerted effort as of lately to do much more research and writing on neon art history and theory. So you can
follow along and see what
encourage us to keep our deadlines.
And then some resources, right?
Yes. Well, actually, we're going to go into the process.
Oh, right. That's right. Process.
Yeah. So this is a really fun video of Meryl that was shot for a brand that we won't talk about. But it kind of shows an overview of neon being made. This is a ribbon burner. So glass tubes heated up bend by bend in specialty fires. And electrodes, which carry the current through the glass, are welded onto each end. And then after the piece is finished, like you saw in the first video, the piece is bombarded or lit up. And so we'll go through each of those stages for you, but this kind of centers us in the process and how it's done. That's a crossfire. Meryl
putting an electrode on. Yeah, it's a terrible weld. But this is some mercury. So some of the tubes do have mercury in it. A lot of the phosphor coated tubes, which we'll talk about in a second, have a little ball of mercury in it. This is setting up for bombarding, and a lot of the same stuff that you saw in the previous video. So we might move it along. Happy to take questions at the end. These are patterns. So everything starts with the pattern. It's so important. It follows the tube for the rest of its life. This image comes from Dean Blazek's ABC Neon book, who is just kind of a legend in the trade. And he published a bunch of books that have recommended bending sequences for various letter forms.
And so the tubes are bent and then they're registered back to pattern. So each time, and then it can also be used as a hanging pattern. So the pattern is kind of the Bible. And then colors are made through a variety of different ways. Like we talked about with Ramsey, there are many different noble gases. Neon is the namesake of the medium. It's not the only noble gas that's used. Neon is a red-orange, but argon is used, which is kind of purple when it's used on its own, and a light blue when it's combined with mercury. Krypton is kind of white and wiggly. Helium is kind of peachy.
Krypton is like a ghostly white.
Yeah, I don't even think I've ever seen it.
But neon and argon mercury are the two that are used most frequently in commercial industry because they are the brightest and they can compete with daylight.
And then there's colored glass or classic glass. So the glass itself has a color to it, and depending on what that gas you put on side, it can change the color of what it glows. And then phosphor coating is one of the most common ways to get a bunch of different colors, which is phosphor powder on the inside of the glass that phosphoresces from the UV output of most frequently argon mercury.
This is Tiza using a UV light in her studio to show the luminescence of the different colors of the tubes that she has in her studio.
And then there's the bending part of it, the verb part of our.
Yeah. So pieces there on the left-hand side, that's typically used for curves and bigger, wider bends because the ribbon burner has a wide width there. And then on the right-hand side is the crossfire, aptly named, in my opinion, for tighter bends, like 90-degree bends, or what we call double backs, which is just a tight 300 or 360 bend.
Or what you saw Meryl doing, which is welding or splicing, which can be done with a hand torch, like teasing, or in the crossfire, which you can see Meryl doing here. And if you look really closely, you'll see her pregnant belly because Meryl bent, bombarded, installed, climbed up ladders, curated exhibitions, all through all 9 months of her pregnancy. With me to help. And then the bombarding process.
Yeah, so this is a video of the demo that we did on the floor of MOG. Just quickly to review the process, it combines current, which produces heat, which burns out impurities inside the tube, and vacuum, which cleans out the tube from those impurities, right? So those two components are the most important part of bombarding. And then the same system, what we call the manifold, delivers the noble gas into the tube.
And then we think the sound on this works, but if not, we'll talk over it. It doesn't.
No.
So what Meryl's saying is basically what you just said.
Yeah. So what Danny's doing is she's hitting the arc of the bombarder. We call it a bombarder, but essentially it's a big power pole transformer. It's 15,000 volts and it delivers a really high current to the glass, which heats the glass up. As the glass heats up, it builds impurities. Those impurities outgas. So everything from condensation, spit from our blowhose, dust from storage, and even air molecules get evacuated from the tube with the vacuum. It's a little bit more complicated, but this is an abridged version. And then after that is done and the glass is cooled down, then the same system delivers the noble gas into the tube. And what you're seeing is just a discharge of whatever's in the tube at the moment, right? So it does light the tube up, but it's not necessarily what the tube is going to look like in the end.
And that's the whole process that we're going to show you today. This is a little resource page for you all. We are also going to send out links on the chat. But there are a lot of amazing people who have been putting together neon histories for a long time. Didier Delser and Paul Greenstein came out with Neon, a Light History. They did extensive research in libraries, archives, all kinds of things. And that book is surprisingly concise, even though it produces so much, or it has so much information. And oh, it doesn't want me to stay on that
Screen.
on that screen, but we'll share it out for you. There's a few other really amazing neon like history books by Rudy Stern and
Christopher
Rabbit,
Ribat, who
yeah.
did a Flickering Light. So a lot of the books include historical books, novelty collector books, things that on Amazon will tell you that they're $60. It's because they're pretty rare. And then there's neon manuals and the videos that we showed, and of course, where to learn if you guys are interested. And you can always reach out to us if you have any questions about that or need any resources.
Yeah, and we hope this gave you a little bit of context around neon and why we choose to concentrate our energy on artist vendors and what they're doing today and really stewarding the craft forward. Thank you.
Thanks.
So hi, everybody, and thank you. Can everyone hear me? I think so. I think I'm up. Thank you so much, Meryl and Kelsey. What a joy to experience neon with you and to learn about this craft and art form. I'm Karen Olson. I'm the editor-in-chief of American Craft, and I'm calling in from my home in South Minneapolis. So glad you're with us. As Rachel mentioned at the beginning of this event, all the artists here with us tonight are featured in the spring issue of American Craft. And I'm going to use this little interlude between time with the artists to share with you how our issues come together and more specifically how the stories about these artists came together. So American Craft is a quarterly magazine. It's 84 years old. It covers craft across the nation. So we cover different mediums, techniques, processes, aesthetics, locations, cultural traditions. We cover everything from functional, everyday craft to craft in museums. It's the whole range. And we get ideas from scanning stories in the news, getting pitches from freelance writers and PR folks, hearing from artists and other craft professionals in the field, learning about museum exhibitions and gallery shows, poring over other craft magazines and books, ideas from conferences, and our own research. So trying to distill it all down into something manageable that's about 100 pages is quite a feat. So we use a theme, and Emerge is the theme of our spring issue. We tend to want to use themes with a really human connection, something that ties us to the kind of intimacy and humanity inherent in the handmade. So in the issue that's themed Emerge, about things being revealed, things coming out, we address that theme in multiple direct and subtle ways. For example, we profile Ashley Joseph Martin, who is in Philadelphia, who carves wood away to reveal these very moody, organic tables and lamps and chess sets and more. We feature Bill Harris. He's a former chief of the Catawba Nation who shares how mud excavated from a 500-year-old mud hole that his family has been using for centuries in South Carolina to transform it into ceramic vessels and sculptures. And this is a 4,000-year-old tradition of Catawba pottery. And we featured Meryl and Kelsey in a story about new developments in neon. We learned about She Bends when they put on Redefining Neon Legacy at the Museum of Glass in Tacoma. And we started following their work as well as other, starting to learn about other young neon artists. So we assigned the story to John Spade. He's a longtime arts writer. He's one of our contributing editors, and he's a performance artist. He's a real mensch. And we asked him to find out what's happening in neon. And the result is this fascinating story about and I know that from what Meryl and Kelsey were talking about, what a really interesting history of this fairly new craft. So the stories about the history, about the teaching, how teaching and learning to work in neon used to be the domain of commercial sign shops, which is traditionally male dominated. But today artists are teaching and mentoring each other. So while we were editing this story, we reached out to Corey Siegel, who's the executive director of the Museum of Neon Art in Glendale, California, to do some fact checking. We like to make sure what we're printing is accurate. She gave us a big picture view of changes happening in not only how one learns to work in neon, but where the innovation is happening. She said, today neon has reached this really interesting flourishing point where a lot of practitioners are taking up the material and understand that the way that things were done in the past in the neon industry is going away. The future of neon and the neon renaissance we're in are driven by artists in a major way. I would argue that commercial sign makers have always been artists, but what is keeping neon alive today is artists pushing the boundaries of the material. What she said gave us the title for the story, A Neon Renaissance. And I wanted to tell you, we also recently published online on our website a few other, let's see, an interview with Danny Case, who they mentioned. I'm putting it in the chat here. This is an interview with Danny in the Queue, which is our artist interview series. And we also posted a video made by Leticia Maldonado, who both of them were participants in exhibitions and residencies put on by She Bends. So again, we're so pleased to have had Kelsey and Meryl with us, and we appreciate the work they're doing to expand who gets to participate in neon and what's possible with the form. So also in the spring issue is A Handmade Wonderland, which is a story about the home, studios, and work of Paula Wilson, who's formerly trained in painting and printmaking, and Mike Lagg, a woodworker. They'll soon be taking you on a tour of their studios in Carrizozo, New Mexico. But I wanted to share with you how this story also came together. So through our website, we accept pitches from writers and other folks. And last year, we received a pitch from Rebecca McNamara, who is an associate editor at the Tang Museum at Skidmore College in Saratoga Springs, New York. Rebecca was the curator of the recent exhibition, Paula Wilson, Toward the Sky's Back Door, and the editor of the book by the same name, which was just published. While working together, Rebecca visited Paula and Mike at their home, and she wrote to us afterwards, and I was suggesting a story. So I wanted to read a little excerpt of what she wrote when she pitched the story to us. Paula Wilson and Mike Lagg, spouses and occasional artistic collaborators, fashioned an art-filled life in the rural high desert town of Carrizozo, New Mexico. In their home, guest house, and studios, the walls, floors, cabinets, curtains, shutters, doorknobs, light switches, lamps, plates and utensils, even the top of a broomstick, all become spaces for art and innovation. Walking into these spaces is like walking into an artwork. And as they regularly wear clothes Wilson has painted or has painted, as well as jewelry, belt buckles, and tool belts Lagg has made, they themselves become moving artworks, part of a modern day Gesamtkunstwerk, or total work of art, in the desert. So we commissioned Rebecca to write an essay about Paul and Mike and their work in spaces. It's a wonderful story. And now we can experience them live, and you'll see what can emerge when there's full commitment to a creative life. I'm delighted to welcome Paula and Mike to the Zoom stage.
Thank you so much, Karen. Thank you, everyone. It's so great to be sharing space.
That was a beautiful introduction.
Truly. Yes, and thank you so much to Rebecca McNamara for pitching the story, for writing the text that accompanied the incredible photography.
Yeah, and we thank the American Craft Council for just making this happen. We understand this is a new thing that you're all doing, and we're really proud to be part of it.
Absolutely. So I'm Paula Wilson. I'm a mixed media artist. I grew up in Chicago, but as Karen said, we both are living in Carrizozo, New Mexico.
And I'm Mike Lagg. I'm a self-taught woodworker originating from South Dakota, but been in the high desert plains of Carrizozo for 30 plus years now. So.
And one thing that's so fun about this setup is that we get to show you rather than tell you about what we're making. So let's kick it off.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
You did mention that this is our greenhouse.
I did not mention that this is our greenhouse. So we're situated in a kind of little wonderland space. And while it may not be Monet's garden, we are super inspired by our environment. And I'm going to make a wood block print, a wood block that we're going to print. And I'm inspired by these nasturtium blossoms in our greenhouse. And also the nasturtium leaves. They have such a quintessential shape to them. I'm going to draw this. And in our time together, we're going to print this out. All right. I like their veins that they have. Okay, that's it. We'll keep it going.
That's great stuff.
So, as Karen was saying, we're in Carrizozo, New Mexico. This is a town of under 1,000 people in the high desert plains of south central New Mexico, and it's an old railroad town. And this is a sort of sunken down part of our studio space, which has these lovely adobe walls. We have really good dirt here, really good mud. All the buildings that we'll be in are made of adobe. And we like to build our environment in a way that shows artistry, but also play. So this is a space in which we'll do a bonfire. And here, let me take over the cinematography.
Yeah, right.
What do we have here?
Well, this is the goat. And it's our portable power supply. We will never be without electricity, not like they are in Spain. Because this thing is by the sun.
All right, here we are at our first stop.
All aboard.
So in Carrizozo, there isn't any glass recycling. So Mike and I took over. And we have an arts organization called Momazozo, and this is an activity that we often do in our 1 hour that we're open on Fridays from 12 to 1. Thank you. Well done.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. So these are some of our grounds, our area where we commune with nature, with the elements, like wind. Oh, Kelsey says, well done to you. And here we are at the rear entrance. Like for it to oblige. Here we go through the turnstile. We collect rainwater off of this roof and gather it in this cistern.
Yeah, 1,200 gallons.
This building is pretty dilapidated, and we welcome the grapevines, silver lace vines, helping us grow new horizons.
We like to think of ourselves as stewards of this property. We are just here for a moment. And it's a good example of becomes of all of us. We decay and fall into me and self in this venture, this hotel. I'm trying to extract its end of life circumstance in a positive way. And what we're going to do in here is I just cut this thing out and I'm going to slice it in two with this tool. So now I have two.
Nice.
And one of them is going to be a necklace for Paula.
Oh, fantastic.
There.
Yeah.
Let me change directions.
Thanks so much, Ella.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is one of my workshops. And
This is a money gobbler. Oh, well done.
yeah, it gobbled it. And I like to do light as well. I can't follow up. I can't compete with She Bends for sure. Those guys lit it up. Let me tell you. But me and Paula got our own thing going on here.
Yeah, here's some nice, beautiful lights. And I'm gonna carve into this nasturtium leaf.
You might hear the pigeons in the background. Okay. Well, look what I get to saw. There we are.
Lovely.
That's a nasturtium leaf.
There it is.
No,
We're going to continue on.
this is all part of the building that used to be a hotel. And this, we call this the sky room, because the roof was falling and we cut out the roof. And now we have invited the wild things into our lives, which are the feral pigeons.
This building was originally the Cibolo Hotel.
And this is a great example of Paula and I's collaboration. Paula designed this shade. This is a wooden lampshade with an epoxy resin mixed with sawdust that provides this luminescent part. And it also features some of my kinetic sort of movements. I like making things that move. And a lot of that includes things that make noise.
Tear down the wall.
Yes, I'm trying to work this swing so it will comb my hair. Yeah,
Nice.
this is a little dangerous doing it one-handed. Oh, and then this, of course, is we recycle aluminum cans as well, which is solid glass recycling. But I try to get creative with ping pong balls. This is my only effort so far.
Now we're moving from the Cibolo Hotel and Mike's studio into what used to be the Ford Garage and then was briefly a microbrewery. These are some wings that were featured in a video that we made. This is a piece called Micro House. It is part model, part inspiration, part a representation of our lived spaces. Oh, what you doing over there? This is our ping pong table. We like to take breaks from working in air quotes.
But this is the only thing I can beat Paula at.
Well done. These are some wooden shutters. Like interacting with the light and utilizing the beauty of wood. This is a tumbleweed that we actually cultivated. For scale. I was really excited to see some of the she bends moment where you're utilizing what you might call scrap pieces in that exhibition. And these are some pieces that I call strata that I think utilize that same approach. So honored to be in this issue of Craft, American Craft. And here is a monograph of an exhibition that is available through the Tang Museum's website or Amazon or the Studio Museum in Harlem. This is a bench that was featured in the exhibition that we most recently had. So one thing that Rebecca was sort of saying in her pitch to the magazine is that we make our own clothes. So this is an example of a piece of clothing that was printed using this wood block print and then this incredible wooden belt. And the top that I'm wearing was made from this wood block print, and the skirt from this printed roller where it rolled the fabric up with ink and then sewed it. So remember this? Let's get this going.
Yeah, I remember that. Let's do this.
We got this inked up.
Wow, that fast.
Yeah. And I've been working on this nasturtium print for a little bit. I'm going to print this larger one here.
Oh.
And one thing I love about printmaking is that you can do a multiple. So I'm just gonna do a faint kind of ghost print of whatever residual ink is left in this.
Awesome.
Thanks. So one of the last things we'd like to show you is just a work in progress that we have going in the studio space.
But I didn't get to swing on the swing yet.
I know, I haven't swung on a swing.
You should swing. You should swing. Yeah, let's do. This is the third swing that you all have seen. This one is powering a fan that Paula painted. Awesome. Yeah.
And we've got a plate that we just made and a wooden fork, which I don't know if we'll get splinters from that.
That almost never happens, Paula.
Okay, good. So here's a piece that I'm working on right now in the studio. And my work spans from really intimate miniature work to floor to ceiling pieces that can span up to 30 feet high or long. And this is a mix of printmaking, collage, painting. I really like to mix it all up in my work. Another example of that would be this piece, which is titled To Burn, which might seem reminiscent of the bonfire that you saw. So it's kind of a self-portrait of our life and our collaborative efforts. And the wood block grain here is produced by a wood block print. And just by some shading and certain cuts, you can really create a three-dimensional effect. Really creates a lot of space and dynamism. Well, that's just a taste of what we wanted to show you, and we'd love to answer questions if anyone has them. I know.
How do you do those stars, Paula? Those look awesome.
It's actually a piece of plexiglass that drilled holes through.
Whoa.
Can you make that out in the video?
No, I cannot get that out.
Kind of hard, but just a drill and a drill bit, and then ink it up with black ink. And I've been printing on muslin, kind of thin cotton-based fabric. I know as we transition to where we'll sit to answer questions, I know we got one in the chat that asked, how do you cultivate a tumbleweed?
That's a really good question.
I mean, most of the little tumbleweed sprouts, we've been able to recognize them at this point. We pull up, but there was this one that kind of bushed out, and we just let it grow, and it was really well situated, and it did its own job growing.
Yeah, I didn't fertilize it or anything.
So I just hopped back in so that I can facilitate some Q&A for y'all, since you've been kind of bringing us all over your amazing studio space. And we don't have a ton of questions that popped up in the chat, mostly people just being like, well, that's really cool. Like, I want that swing. My daughters would love to have that model. They would be gaga over that.
It's something that you can kind of play with, you know? It was
very childlike.
Yes.
Yeah, which is so lovely. But I do have a question for you guys. So do you have a favorite collaboration that you have done together? It can be either like, since you've been collaborating, but that can also be kind of a big question. So maybe it's more recently, like, do you have a recent collaboration that you've worked on together that is maybe one of your favorites, and why?
Yeah, we might have different answers. What comes up for me is these moth mobiles that we've been making that start moving in a exhibition space with a motion sensor. So this idea of creating movement and energy and life within an exhibition. So it's usually printed on fabric, and then we'll work together on the kind of mechanisms, and that it's mirroring Lepidoptera, like moths and butterflies, that are a big source of inspiration for me.
Yeah, and it takes advantage of our separate talents. Me being a woodworker and Paula being a fabric printmaker, and combining those two really really worked with the moss. So that's a good example. I like that one.
Cool. That sounds amazing. I love the idea of that, like all the play and all of the motion in your work and collaboratively is so lovely. And then I think I have just a thank you from somebody in the chat thanking us for this program. And then from Lisa, we have how might each of you start your day? Do you begin with an area you're working on in the complex, or alternatively, where you're drawn to in the moment?
Beautiful question.
Well, I get up first in the morning, so I'll answer this question first. And I have probably 20 different things that I'm working on, I could say, and I get up in the morning and I just visit them in my mind and just search for the one that I feel good about. That's how I start my days.
Yeah, and I think that you kind of you have rounds almost that you.
Yeah. I do the whole round that we just did with you all, and I do that probably 2 or 3 times a day, actually. Just looking for things that I need to do, or creative things that need to happen.
And I think that, yes, so I sleep in a little later than Mike of late, and I also will come to the studio, and the first thing I always do is clean off my workbench and leave it a mess, and then, clear it off. And I generally try to pull out my notebook and write a little, almost just even taking 3 breaths to get centered, and then it's almost a way to like reset or to invite the creative energy. It's not quite a haiku, but just 3 lines of poetry I don't consider myself a writer, so it's sort of a way to challenge that uncomfortable space of, I don't know if this is good or bad or whatever, just emoting.
Yeah, that's lovely. From both of you. Those are lovely and very like meditative ways to kind of start your days, which is yeah, just really lovely. Um, and then I had actually a couple of questions that came in for Kelsey and Meryl as well. Would you mind if I invited them back onto the screen to respond to a couple of those that came in a little later?
Yeah, it takes people a long time to ask a good question.
Yeah, yeah, and we can maybe kind of combine our Q&As a little bit more, y'all. So just Kelsey and Meryl, let me go back here and see if I can find. There was a question about where does Dan Flavin's neon artwork stand in neon history, and how long does a neon artwork last?
Yeah, well,
It came in.
yeah, Dan Flavin was kind of in the same era as Bruce Nauman, but Flavin's work was typically almost all the time, fluorescence, not neon, which is a very similar kind of material makeup. Fluorescents are glass tubing with argon and mercury in them and with phosphors, but it's not made the same way. They're machine-made tubes, much thinner glass, and they have more like ballasts at the end than electrodes. But yeah, same kind of era.
Yeah, I think so. Dan Flavin's main concept around his work is that his fluorescent tubes are ready-made, although a lot of the manufacturers that made some of the specialty tubes it wasn't exactly ready-made, but it is an automated process. And neon would kind of take him out of that conceptual framework as a very not ready-made item. So it's a common misconception that Dan Flavin is a neon artist.
And then I think the second part of that question was how long could a neon piece last? And it can really, when we say lifetime, we mean like it can last up to 100 years. Sometimes the power supplies are the thing to go, like the electrical components, but the glass itself, if it's made well, can stay a vacuum and hold the gas inside forever.
Theoretically a lifetime. The electrodes will tend to burn out sometimes, and it just really depends on how well it's made in the first place. The bombarding process is really key. If the tube is bombarded well and it's made well, then then it'll hold a vacuum and hold that pressure. It doesn't leak. There's no need to refill it or anything like that. It's just kind of an electrical component that will go out that needs to be replaced, which is usually like a $50 piece of technology. And in the event that things do break, and it doesn't have a mercury in it, which, nowadays we have a lot of other gases that we're using, it can be repaired. So it's very sustainable in that way.
Awesome. And then actually, I had a question that came in from Karen because we asked Paula and Mike about their kind of favorite collaboration together. Do you, both of you, Kelsey and Meryl, have a favorite collaboration that you have experienced recently, like through She Bends, through your individual work? Anything
Yeah,
that you would
we've
like to
actually
share?
been talking a lot about this recently because we didn't enter working on She Bends like necessarily as creative collaborators, and that has become much more a part of our process. And so
Mhm.
Paula and Mike, you're going to get an email from us soon to see what your process is like. But it's been really fun to kind of create our own framework for what creative collaboration, artistic collaboration looks like. My favorite, I know, is the kind of big neon sign was at the Museum of Craft and Design, was the first like large piece I had ever made, and that was kind of the fourth unofficial residency of that show. And I worked, Meryl is my master apprentice trade. Um, and she brought me through that process, and it was a 5 foot sign, and we made it in like under a month, and it was really fun. And made channel letters, aluminum channel letters. And so that was my favorite kind of collaboration because we were in the process of curating this show around kind of craft pedagogy and material responsibility. And we were also in real time able to work in the studio and think about how those different methodologies kind of play out. So that was my favorite.
I mean, yeah, I like that process, especially because I think neon is now coming into your life as a true creative practice, and you're devoting a lot of time to it. And it's fun having Kelsey in the studio and sharing space with her and being able to get her really, really good at it. She's really good. She's a natural born bender, I think. So it was really fun to see her flourish and put her time into it. So I would say that that's one of two,
Yeah.
one of two favorites. Yeah. There will be
Good.
more.
Good. And then I think this might be a question. Let me read it really quick. I think this might be a question for you guys, Paula and Mike. You seem to live in the middle of nowhere. How do you balance your time between isolation and the stimulation of interactions with other artists that are found in more populated areas?
That's an awesome question that we could give you a couple different answers for that. And that one is that Paula co-runs an artist in residence program with Joe Malkerson in Carrizozo, and that brings us fresh artists with new ideas and that sort of thing to Carrizozo, which we really thrive on. And then the other answer would be that we just came back from New York City and a book signing tour that for Paula's book. So, we did New York and Chicago and Omaha and St. Louis in our 1 month stay. So that gets us out of the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, exactly. So people coming in and us going out, keeping the circulation going in general.
Yeah. Well, and it's nice to have the balance. I to be able to have that space when you need it, and especially when you're really kind of deep into your creative practice, and then also like having the inspiration and the interaction with other artists and your community and everything too. It's nice to have that balance, I imagine.
Exactly. I'll just say, like, we have an amazing community of artists in Carrizozo itself as well. Yeah.
And when you live in the middle of nowhere, it is a choice. We picked it because we enjoy this solitude in the way of working.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I know we're kind of approaching our time, y'all, but there was a question that kind of came in, and I think it might be directed to you, Mike, but I'm unsure. And if anybody else wants to respond, is the lamp are the lamps various, simple shapes and put into commercial household use? Are the lamps, are you making them maybe? Or are they mostly for you and Paula, for your home, for your studio, or do you make them and do you make them for selling at all?
Um, Presently, I'm not accepting commissions, but I do make them, or I have made them in the past for various galleries and
Yeah.
specific homes. Yes, yeah,
Yeah, I like that about the simple shapes, that it's
Hmm.
like this faceted.
yeah. It is a really simple lampshades. I think are.
Oh.
It took me a long time to figure out a way to make one. I was making lamps for many, many years before I figured out how to make one out of wood. I mean, I was a woodworker and I kept trying to make them out of fabric or glass. And then when I finally gave up and made them out of wood, that's when I felt I had success.
So cool.
Yep. Yeah. And it looks like they were directing it towards neon. So is there a neon component to that as well?
Like, is neon used in households? Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have that kind of like retail commercial use widespread. One really amazing thing about neon is that like it has lasted outdoors as neon signage for like decades. So that was really its strong point, but it absolutely can be. Like the kind of hardware that's made for homes is made for different kinds of light fixtures, and neon has its own kind of power source transformer. But it 100% can be lamps. It can be neon runners you see in bars, which give like a diffuse light.
Hmm.
And it's a really sustainable form of light, and it doesn't pull a lot of amps, which is a really big misconception. And again, like if it breaks, there's a craftsperson who can fix it for you.
Hmm.
And I'll elaborate because I see that they've said on the simple shapes as sold in Target now. And I want to distinguish that those are not real neon. They are LED plastic signs. They call them neon because I think that neon has fallen into the Xerox, tragedy where everything that's brightly colored is called neon. But neon is actually a noble gas, and it's the quintessential term for our process. And so those pieces that you see at Target or on most of the stuff that you see that's neon signs online is not actually real neon, and it has nothing to do with our industry. We dislike it very much.
Only because, like LEDs serve their purpose,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Like each light source has its purpose. The whole LED industry has done an incredible job as kind of positioning LED just in general as a really sustainable light source, which it is for light bulbs. But in terms of LED flex or like luminous tubes, neon is actually so much more sustainable. It's better for the environment for a million different reasons.
Longer lasting.
Lasts longer. It's made out of natural materials, and the LED flex is made from LED diodes. So if one goes out, the sign's ruined, and it's a ton of toxic materials and plastic. And the one benefit of LED flex is that it is indestructible. And as Meryl very aptly coined a few years ago, it is indestructible. And so when you throw it out, it is indestructible in a landfill.
Correct.
So yeah, we advocate very strongly for supporting real neon instead of LED flex.
And I will also add that the LED industry does an amazing job as well at spreading very erroneous information about our industry and positions themselves as the future of neon, which we also disagree with. Yes.
Truth.
So good question.
Truth bomb.
Very good
Yep.
question. Thank you for setting us on that rant. We love to go on that one.
And Karen, thanks for dropping in. Come into the space, please. I think that now is probably an appropriate time to wrap up. Karen, do you have any, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have anything that you would like to share? or any last thoughts with us.
Oh, I just wanted to say this was a total joy. It was so great to see all the work that you've both all four been doing and letting us into your worlds and your knowledge. It was just really a treat.
Yep.
Thank you so much. It's like such an honor to be invited into this conversation and to meet Paul and Mike. So thank you so much, Karen and Rachel.
Thank you.
Yep. Yes, thank you so much, everybody. I'm going to take that opportunity to officially close our program. Thank you again, Paula and Mike, Kelsey and Meryl, Karen, for spending your time with us this evening, and of course to everybody who attended for spending your time with us this evening. I will be following up with a recording with the resources that Kelsey and Meryl put together. And so stay tuned for that. But thanks, everybody, and have a great night.
Thank you.